Hey, this is Rue, and today I'm doing another EU4 challenge run, this time starting as Granada. The rules for this one are going to be a little bit more relaxed than last time. We can use diplomats to improve relations and fabricate claims, but we can't enter into alliances or have subjects. Our goal for this run is to take control of all of Iberia, convert it to Sunni, reach empire government rank, and be the #1 great power. The first part of the goal is also an achievement, so if you're looking to get that one, you might be able to get some useful tips from this video. Granada starts the game in a tricky spot. We have a terrible 1-1-0 ruler, a rebellion that's almost guaranteed to fire, and we neighbor Castile, a much more powerful nation that wants our land badly. Let's get into it. We're going to open with the standard moves for a small nation in survival mode. Focus mill and grab the estate privileges that give monthly mana. For the ulama, we're going to pick up the negative piety privilege. I intend to spend the bulk of this game with high mysticism. Legalism has some decent bonuses, but for our purposes, I really want the army morale and missionary strength modifiers from high mysticism. The ability to call on religious followers for additional manpower will also be useful. Somebody left a comment that I should take promote merchant guilds bookkeeping more, and I think they're right. As you'll see, we're going to be running a debt economy, and the reduced interest and inflation reduction cost will come in handy. I'm choosing to keep the fort in Malacca. You can make a case for getting rid of it, but it can be useful, particularly after the first war with Castile. The important thing to know for this early game is that we have staggered truces with the other Iberian nations. Castile is up first in February of 1448, with Portugal and Aragon a year behind in February of 1449. This will become very important in a bit. In a normal game, with a Moroccan and/or Tunisian alliance, it can make a lot of sense to go after Tlemcen in the early game and expand into North Africa. But I don't think that's a good idea in a no allies run. Castile is basically guaranteed to declare on us when the truce is up, and we can't be distracted fighting Tlemcen or separatist rebels when that happens. Also, getting mill access through Ceuta, a Portuguese province, can be an issue. We grab our first mercenaries, the Free Company, in May of 1445. In August of 1446, Aragon gets the Navarra PU. In my experience, it's a toss-up whether this goes to Aragon or Castile. More importantly, Aragon chooses to give up the Naples PU. The AI almost always takes this option even though it's a terrible decision from a gameplay perspective. In May of 1447, the Granadan War of Succession fires. We get a decent heir here, 246, so we're going to put the rebellion down. The rebels spawn in the same province our troops are in, and we defeat them without too much trouble. Completing the War of Succession lets us complete the event Rout the Pretenders, giving us 20% manpower recovery speed for 20 years. With our extra stability, we're also able to complete the Plight of our Kin, giving us 2 base tax and 4 base manpower in our capital, which is a big deal when we're this small. About 5 months before the Castile truce is up, it's time to start getting ready. We take a bunch of loans and hire 2 more merc companies. Castile has around 30,000 troops, so our current force limit, just 9, obviously isn't going to cut it. Here's a look at what this is going to do to our economy. We're losing almost 15 gold per month, which is the better part of a loan every month tick. We're at 21,000 soldiers, which is 233% of our force limit. Even so, we're still outnumbered. If Castile was a bit smarter, they'd just wait and let us destroy our economy before attacking, but patience isn't their strong suit, and I see the telltale signs in April of 1448, Castilian troops gathering on the eastern border. The war debt comes in early May, with Malacca as the war goal. Castile hasn't called any allies. Portugal's the only one close enough to join, and we still have a truce with them until February. However, we can use this to our advantage. We have an 8-month window here to get as much war score as possible. If the war is going badly enough for Castile, I think it's around -25 or -30 war score, Portugal won't join. Castile's forces are split in two, with a larger army of 18k and a smaller one with 10k. We initiate the first battle of the war, attacking the larger Castilian army in the drylands of Albacete. Castile has army morale of 3.4, a full 0.6 higher than ours, which is significant for this stage of the game. We're doing everything we can, getting 5% from expansion as zealotry and another 5% from mysticism, but Castile not only has 15% morale in their traditions, they also have a morale advisor, and they got lucky with the last jousting tournament event. Still, we managed to win, getting an impressive 18 war score. However, the overall war score is still at -1 due to our entire coastline being blockaded. Our fleet is hopelessly outclassed. Castile has 5 heavies and won't be able to help in this war. I bring our forces back to relieve the siege of Malacca, but Castile retreats everybody except a single sacrificial regiment. We capture a few provinces to the west, then move east. We push north into La Mancha, catching and routing a small Castilian stack. A second force marches south from Toledo, and they also get routed. With the bulk of the Castilian army on our fort in Malacca, we lay siege to the enemy capital. Unfortunately, Castile has a level 3 fort here, and we're not going to win this siege race. I split off all 3 merc companies to occupy provinces in southwestern Castile. It's the end of January, our window is basically closed, but we've reached 32 war score, which should be enough to keep Portugal from getting called in. I leave 1 regiment in Toledo to hold the siege and combine everybody else in Cordoba. This battle goes better than I expected. Castile has back-to-back 0 rolls in the first 2 phases and was never really in this one. The next priority is to capture the enemy capital, so I stack all our forces on Toledo. We finish the siege in February of 1450 on a 42% tick. We then head back south to relieve another siege of Malacca, engaging in May of 1450. Castile retreats early here, or I think this would have been a pretty close one. Our forces head north to push into the Castilian heartland, and were met in Madrid in July. Somehow Castile has rolled an amazing general, 6624, which is making every battle more difficult. I'm not sure if this is the general from the last jousting tournament event or something they get in their mission tree since I don't really play Castile. The war's basically over at this point, and we reach a peace deal in December of 1450. We take 7 provinces across southern Iberia, including Sevilla and Cordoba, as well as 715 gold. I do have one regret here. I should have gone with less flat gold and instead taken the province of La Mancha, which has a gold mine. The first war went about as well as we could have hoped, but now we need to core all this land, and our war exhaustion's still high. Unfortunately, between focusing mill and our ruler being so bad, we don't have much admin or diplo power. I dismiss 1 merc company, but I check our economy in May of 1451 and we're still losing 6.5 gold per month and inflation's at almost 10%. We have to strike a tricky balance here. If we demilitarize too much, Portugal or Aragon's going to declare on us, and I don't want to fight either of them just yet. We're working on coring provinces in August of 1454 when we get a lucky break. Castile declines the Iberian wedding. I didn't save scum this. I actually think fighting a combined Castile-Aragon could have been a fun challenge, but at the same time I will admit to feeling a bit relieved. As Granada, we want the other Iberian nations to stay weak and divided. One slightly unfortunate side effect of the rules of this run: Granada gets perma-claims to all this land in southern Iberia, as well as a 5% army morale bonus that would have been really useful, but both of these are locked behind a mission involving Morocco. Completing that mission involves either allying them, which we obviously can't do, or rivaling and insulting them. Unfortunately, Morocco doesn't come up as a valid rival until much later in the game, so for the early phase we'll just have to make do with fabricated claims. We do a little bit of debt management in February of 1455, taking 1% merchant guild loans to pay off our 3.8% bank loans. One of the nice things about a high mysticism run is that we can get relatively high missionary strength without having to take any ideas or hire any advisors. In November, we start converting the first Catholic province, which we're able to do in just 15 months. In February of 1456, Morocco makes peace with Tlemcen, splitting their land with Tunis. My plan is to leave the North Africans alone for now and focus on Iberia. We're much less likely to get surprise war declarations from Morocco or Tunis compared to our Catholic neighbors. In September of 1458, Austria gets the Burgundian inheritance, and this isn't your regular Burgundy. Burgundy's ejected England from the French coast, and in fact has so much land that Austria might not be able to keep them loyal. We'll keep an eye on that. By summer of 1459, we've managed to stabilize the economy and significantly reduce our outstanding debt. We're still working on finishing coring and converting the last Castilian provinces, but I see a concerning Aragonese stack show up on our eastern border. They haven't declared yet, but I have a bad feeling and I start rebuilding the military. I increase our regular forces to 12k, but before the troops even finish training, we get the notification. The good news here is that I think this is going to be a 1v1. Aragon's allied to Austria and Savoy, which could be a lot to handle, but at the very least I don't think Austria is going to join due to distance from capital. The bad news is that Aragon has 24,000 troops, 27,000 if you include Navarra, and we don't. So it's time for more loans and more mercs, and we hire 2 additional merc companies. The first battle of the war is pretty underwhelming. A small enemy force tries to pick off one of our newly trained regiments, but I send in our other armies, and without backup, the Aragonese are forced to retreat. We're able to grab Miltech 5 and march. This is why it's important to focus Mill at the start of the game. Falling behind in Miltech as a small nation can be a run-ender. We fall back to recover morale, and Aragon occupies several provinces in the east and lays siege to our capital. We engage in August of 1461. Both sides are about even in numbers and quality, but Aragon has a -2 mountain terrain penalty which proves decisive. Our forces advance to the east, and we rally to repel an attack in Yativa. I'm not sure what the AI is doing here. At first it looks like it's marching his combined army of 25k in, but at the last second over half the troops bail out and he ends up taking a 2-to-1 numbers disadvantage. We go on the offensive next, attacking into Valencia in March of 1462. This is another head-scratcher. Navarra has a 10k stack adjacent to Valencia, but instead of reinforcing their ally and possibly winning, they just stand there. Just like the first war, it'd be really nice to have naval supremacy, but we don't. Aragon has 2 heavies and 9 galleys, while we have 2 galleys and 9 light ships. Sieging coastal provinces without naval supremacy is painful. I think Castile must still be in debt from our last war, since they sell one of their provinces to Portugal in November. A month later, Aragon helps us out, marching south to engage a stack of Castilian rebels sieging our fort in Malacca. We take the fort in Valencia at the end of April of 1463, and we rush back to defend our fort. We take that battle in June, and we win easily, with Aragon retreating quickly. We advance northeast again, laying siege to the Aragonese fort in Osca. For some reason, Aragon takes another -2 mountain penalty to attack one of our merc companies, suffering another loss. It feels like we've been winning every fight, but we're still at just 41% war score. Unfortunately, the Aragonese capital is pretty hard to get to. We take what's probably an ill-advised battle into Osca, putting us on the receiving end of the mountain terrain penalty. Fortunately, we have enough numbers to come out ahead. We settle into a bit of a standoff here, with our main army sieging the fort with the merc companies arrayed in support. We capture the fort in July of 1464 on a 28% tick. I move our forces east to siege the final Aragonese forts, but we end up making peace first in February of 1465. We take 4 provinces along the Gulf of Valencia, along with war reparations and 463 gold. We could have continued the war to get a 100 war score peace deal, but each month was costing us 16 gold, and we weren't even close to capturing Barcelona yet. Between our 2 wars, we've completed the requirements to restore Al-Andalus. There's a group of provinces you have to take back from Castile, but beyond that you have a choice of taking 2 provinces in southern Portugal or 2 in southern Aragon. This is a pretty major decision. It moves our capital to Cortuba, expands our mission tree, upgrades our government rank from duchy to kingdom, gives us a unique tier 1 government reform, and a bunch of permaclaims across southern Iberia. We're going to take the new ideas, even though they aren't exactly a slam dunk. A few of these, tolerance of heathens, vassal force limit, free colonist, aren't going to be useful this run, but that's fine. There is some strong stuff here, like 15% morale of armies, 10% idea cost, and 15% CCR. As of July of 1466, we're in debt about 900 gold. For where we are now, that's not terrible. In May of 1472, Castile enters a golden era. Since one of the age objectives is to discover the New World, it's almost impossible to keep Portugal and Castile from triggering these. By summer, we've started switching over to a galley-based navy. We're not rich enough to afford heavies yet, and galleys pack the best combat bang for the buck, particularly in the Mediterranean. We've built enough ships that we now have more than the Portuguese fleet, allowing us to complete the mission Portuguese Naval Rivalry. This one gives us embargo efficiency and trade power for 20 years. We embrace our first idea group in March of 1480, and I go with economic ideas. This is kind of a placeholder. I'm not sure what I want to put here yet, and economic ideas comes with some decent events. We stay at peace for quite a while. All our neighbors have pretty good diplo. Aragon's allied to Savoy and Austria, who has Giga Burgundy and a PU. Portugal's allied to both Castile and England, who would both honor the call to arms. Castile's allied to Portugal and the Papal State, which is clearly the worst diplo of the 3. We make our move in September of 1485, declaring war on Castile. The plan here is to blitz Portugal and force an early white peace, which would let us focus on Castile. I don't think we'll have any problems facing Castile 1v1, and by the time the Papal State figures out mill access, the war should already be over. As planned, we immediately strike into Portugal. We now have the most power in the Sevilla trade node, which lets us complete the mission Seize Trade Dominance, giving us a cheaper advisor and some permaclaims in the western Mediterranean. We take Lisbon in March of 1486, and Portugal's ready for white peace, but we'll push a little bit more. Taking their capital has forced the Portuguese navy out to sea, and we engage them in the Gulf of Cadiz, winning easily with our 25 galleys. We take a second naval battle in the same area in June, but this time against the Castilian navy. The 5 heavies are just too much, and we're forced to retreat after losing 8 galleys. We separate peace Portugal later that month, taking war reparations and 460 gold. With the exception of that second naval battle, this war's been going very well. The Papal State has made it here with about 13,000 troops, but with this peace deal they end up getting black flagged and will have to march back to Italy. East to relieve the siege of Valencia, but it falls before we can get there. We lay siege to Toledo instead. We now have enough cannon regiments to order artillery barrages, which makes sieging forts much quicker. I think Castile destroyed their fort here due to financial difficulties, leaving just a level 1 capital fort. We captured Toledo in November after a siege of just 31 days. We push north into Castile, who doesn't seem to have any forts remaining. The enemy siege of our capital finally progresses, so we march back south to defend, taking a battle in July of 1487. We chase the remaining Castilian armies north, eventually cornering them in the grasslands of Vizcaya. We take a river crossing penalty to engage, but we have almost twice the troops and Castile's forced to retreat. We take another naval battle off the Gibraltar coast in January. This is a poor location choice by me. This tile isn't considered an inland sea, so our galleys aren't as effective as they would be one tile over in the Gulf of Almeria. Even so, this is a close fight until the end, but we end up losing 12 ships including our only heavy. The Pope's ready for white peace, which we accept in May of 1488. The last Castilian army never returns, and we spend a few months sieging down the rest of their provinces. We reach a peace deal in November of 1488, taking 4 provinces, including the gold mine in La Mancha, gold, and war reparations. We get access to local organizations, which are fun to have. We've been mostly doing this one, the Shadhili Holy Order, which gives one base tax to every province in the state and boosts missionary strength and institution spread. We go after Portugal next, declaring a reconquest war in January of 1495. Aragon's their only ally, so as usual our plan's going to be to blitz Aragon and separate peace them. We siege the mountain fort in Osca without resistance and corner the Aragonese army in Rosselló. We engage in August, but the Aragonese are outmatched and this isn't much of a fight. Mid-war, we finish construction of a mosque in Granada, which lets us complete the mission Qalat al-Hamra, giving us a large boost to institution spread in that province for the rest of the game. We capture the fort in Rosselló in February of 1496 on a 14% tick and move south to help siege Barcelona. We take Barcelona in May, getting the sack event. We go with the army professionalism option here. We build another mosque mid-war, this time in our capital, letting us complete the mission Restore Cortuba. This gives a permanent bonus to yearly prestige. We separate peace Aragon in October, humiliating them, taking gold and war reparations, and forcing them to annul their alliance with Austria. I'm not sure what Portugal's been doing this whole time. They haven't advanced into our territory at all, and we get an easy stack wipe on a small Portuguese force in January. We unlock our second idea group, and I've decided on a plan. We're going to open with quantity and religious, but before doing that, we start our golden era. In April, Navarre declares independence from Aragon, which you don't see too often. After our last war, Aragon declared bankruptcy and has no allies, so this isn't too surprising. We take Lisbon in August of 1497 and push north into the rest of Portugal. We catch the Portuguese army in Aveiro, and after another easy victory, we chase them for a stack wipe. Lastly, we siege the war goal, Portugal's North African outpost in Ceuta. We capture the fort in September of 1498 and set up the peace deal. We humiliate Portugal, take 5 provinces, including our core in Ceuta, and some gold. Navarra makes peace with Aragon in May of 1499, taking an impressive amount of land for themselves. Castile helped with the Independence War, and they're rewarded with the province of Barcelona. Speaking of unusual wars, in April of 1501, Hungary declares a reconquest war against Aragon. Somehow, Hungary was able to get Naples in a PU, and even more strangely, Hungary has direct control of a province in both Sicily and Sardinia. This war ends in May of the following year, with Aragon ceding control of all their remaining Mediterranean islands to Hungary. In January of 1503, we're able to rival and insult Morocco, which lets us finally complete what should have been one of our opening missions, Moroccan ties. This gives 5% land morale for 20 years, as well as some prestige. More importantly, it unlocks further missions, one of which we're able to complete immediately. This one creates a center of trade in Ceuta, as well as giving that province a permanent trade power modifier. Insulting Castile lets us complete the mission Prepare for War, giving us a great general and permanent claims to areas we've already conquered. Retake Valencia gives us some modifiers to local unrest and missionary strength, while Liberate Cortuba gives us 100 admin power, permaclaims in Portugal, and a nice permanent bonus to the province of Isbilia. We've conquered enough to complete the next mission as well, Restore Al-Andalus. This one gives a large swath of permaclaims across Iberia, as well as a temporary reduction in war score cost against other religions, which is going to be very useful. Speaking of fighting other religions, it's time to go after Castile again in May of 1503. Both France and Portugal are going to dishonor, leaving England as Castile's only remaining ally. Our forces head towards Castile's capital, now on the northern coast. We capture Cantabria in September of 1503, and what's left of Castile's navy is forced to head out into our blockade. We now have several heavies of our own, and the Castilian fleet loses 5 galleys before they're able to retreat. Our armies chase a Castilian force east, eventually catching it in the highlands northwest of Barcelona. Despite a terrain advantage, this is an easy stack wipe. We siege the rest of Castile's land, and the next battle isn't until May of 1505 when we engage an English fleet off the Iberian coast. This isn't the full English navy, so we win easily, capturing or sinking both their heavies and half their transports. In September, we finally meet the requirements for another mission, Restore Faith in the Throne. We needed our heirs' claim strength to be 100, which took forever to build up. This mission gives a bunch of permaclaims in North Africa and increases our heirs' skills by 1 in each category. In July of 1506, the Protestant Reformation fires, in Brittany of all places, which is a little inconvenient for us since it's close enough to mess with our future conversions in northern Iberia. We end the Third Castilian War in May of 1508, taking 5 provinces across central Iberia, including Madrid. In July, England starts supporting the independence of Burgundy, and Austria immediately throws in the towel. This leads to the Imperial Entrance event, in which Burgundy asks to join the HRE, which will be accepted. It's Aragon's turn next, and we declare in April of 1510. Aragon's allied to Austria and the Pope, but without Burgundy, Austria should be easier to deal with. Aragon's down to just 3 provinces. Don't be confused by the similar map color. Sardinia and the Balearic Islands are actually part of Hungary. We capture the Aragonese capital in August of 1510 with no resistance. Now it's time to start knocking out allies, and we march towards Rome. With the help of our naval blockade, we take Rome in May of 1511. We separate piece the Papal State, pillaging Rome and demanding both gold and ongoing war reparations. Our troops get black flagged, so it's back to Iberia, where we have to keep the Aragonese capital from being retaken. This is another easy stack wipe. Austria is next, and after capturing a fort, we engage their army in the marshes of Trieste. Austria is outnumbered here almost 3-1, so this is another easy win. We capture Vienna at the end of July of 1513, and we set up the Austrian peace deal. We pillage their capital and take max gold and war reps. With their last ally gone, we can end the Second Aragonese War, demanding full annexation. It's not often that Navarra outlasts Aragon, but they may not be around much longer, as we declare war in September. Due to the way Aragon's rivals played out, Navarra is allied to both Morocco and Tunis, which is kind of funny. However, it looks like Navarra is going to get a stay of execution. Less than 3 months into the war, France demands we sign white peace. Now, if we really wanted to murk up and fight France here, we could, but it'd be a 2-front war and both annoying and expensive, and we have easier targets available. So we'll agree to the enforced peace and deal with France later. The easier target's Portugal, and we declare our second war in May of 1514. Castile and England honor the call to arms, but at this point Castile's a husk of themselves and England isn't really a concern. This is a non-competitive war, so I'll skip to the peace deals. We separate peace Castile in August of 1516, demanding they annul treaties with England, Navarra, and Portugal. We make peace with Portugal in October, taking 3 provinces, including Lisbon. It's hard to get a 100 war score when fighting against England and overseas colonies, and this is good enough for now. We haven't been coalitioned yet, but we've been pretty close. I wasn't expecting to declare war on Hungary this run, but I want the Balearic Islands, so we do so in June of 1517. Hungary's Diplo is shockingly bad for a Catholic major, allied to just Trent, but they do have a strong PU in Naples. We occupy the Balearic Islands and march towards southern Italy. Mid-war, we get the notification that we've become a great power. Somehow we jumped all the way to number 4, with 442 total development. Notice that the Ottomans aren't even on this list. They're having a pretty dreadful game, with very little expansion outside of the obvious early game small fry. In May of 1518, we unlock our 3rd idea group, and I choose trade ideas. You can make a decent case here for espionage or exploration, but honestly I don't really like colonial stuff that much, and we're going to completely ignore it this game. We capture the Neapolitan capital in July of 1518 and set up the peace deal shortly afterwards. I'd like to take both the Balearic Islands and Sardinia here, but we'd get a pretty decent-sized coalition that I don't feel like dealing with, so we just take the Western Islands. Morocco's our next target, and we declare war in June of 1519. We attack Navarra first and separate peace them in March, demanding they annul treaties with Morocco and Tunis. We take the key Moroccan mountain fort in Fez in November of 1520. Morocco tries to take the fort back, and we engage at the end of February. Morocco's attacking into mountains, outnumbered more than 2-1 and down a full point of morale, so this one isn't very close. Morocco comes back for a second attempt in the summer of 1521, this time with Tunisian reinforcements. Once again, our troops repulse them easily. We push into Tunis, capturing their capital in November of 1522. We make separate peace with them, pillaging their capital, forcing them to end their alliance with Morocco, and taking gold. I'll skip 2 years to the final peace deal. We pillage their capital and take 6 provinces in northern Morocco, including the fort in Fez. In October of 1524, we enact our Tier 5 government reform, Volunteers of the Faith. I think this one might be unique, or at the very least it's new to me. Our truce with Portugal's up, and we declare in August of 1525. Venice is now defender of the Catholic faith, and they're having a very strong game, so this could be tougher than last time. We open the war by stack wiping the Portuguese army in Porto, and quickly occupying their remaining provinces. We capture their capital in May, but Venice has already brought 74,000 troops over to eastern Iberia, which is honestly kind of impressive. We march to relieve the siege of Granada, but unfortunately it falls right before we arrive. Venetian troop quality isn't bad, their morale's a little bit lower than ours, but still well above average. Venice tries to stop our own siege in September of 1526 with a large 42,000 man army. Our other stacks reinforce and we come out on top. We engage another Venetian army in the drylands of Saracusta in May of 1527. Venice then tries landing in the Balearic Islands, and we start bringing troops over to fight. Mid-transport, we get attacked by the Venetian Navy in the Gulf of Valencia. Venice is a serious naval power with 15 heavies, 16 galleys, and 27 light ships. We have 8 heavies and 27 galleys. Venice has an advantage in naval morale, but we have a much higher combat width. I'm not sure if this is due to admiral difference, diplotech, or some combination. In any event, it's enough of an advantage that we thrash the Venetian fleet, even capturing their flagship. With our armies assembled, we cross to Minorca. We lose a lot of troops here due to the -2 crossing penalty, but we still end up winning. This is another battle result that I don't understand. It's not a stack wipe, but the Venetian troops are no longer on the map. In a previous video, somebody commented that the AI troops may be getting black flagged and then instantly deleted by the AI, which seems plausible to me. It's back to the mainland, where we engage another Venetian army in March of 1528. We head west and we trap another Venetian stack in Lisbon, attacking in July. The Venetians have limited retreat options, and we're able to stack wipe the retreating forces in Porto. We head back east and chase another Venetian army into southern France. We take a river crossing penalty to engage in Toulouse in December, scoring yet another win. I have to say, I'm impressed with how much effort Venice is putting into this war. It hasn't been particularly effective, but at least they're trying. England, on the other hand, is useless as always. So we've expelled the enemy armies from Iberia, but now what? England and Venice are annoying to fight for similar reasons. Both their capitals are hard to get to. London requires an amphibious invasion into waiting redcoats, while Venice requires fighting through 4 forts in northern Italy and getting naval supremacy in the Gulf of Venice, which can be tricky. The smart thing to do here is probably to wait it out. AIs will usually take white peace after about 5 years of fighting, but that's not a lot of fun, so we start marching towards northern Italy. By the time we reach Lucca, another 75,000 Venetians have shown up in Portugal. This war feels like whack-a-mole, and it gets even worse in December of 1529 when Portugal allies Ethiopia. I think this is by event, since normally AIs won't ally nations at war. After a siege of 253 days, and on the 85% tick, we finally take the Venetian fort in Lucca, which is enough for Venice to accept white peace. Just days later, Ethiopia honors the call to arms and joins against us. We're also out of manpower, but in May of 1530, we use our high mysticism to call on religious followers, giving us a nice boost. As of August, we're now officially 5 years into this war, which means England will accept white peace. It takes another 2.5 years, but Ethiopia follows suit in February of 1533. Before making peace with Portugal, we declare on Navarra. I'm doing this to avoid potential coalition headaches when we make the Portuguese peace deal. Navarra is allied to Castile and guaranteed by Burgundy, so this could be another longer war. We make peace with Portugal in March of 1533, taking 4 provinces and kicking them out of Iberia. I'm not going to mess with their colonies or Atlantic islands. As far as I'm concerned, they can have them. We push into Navarra first, and we're met by a large Burgundian force in August. These are pretty capable troops. Their morale's a little bit lower than ours, but they have a 10% discipline advantage as well as the mountain terrain bonus. It takes our last reinforcement stack arriving barely in time to push the Burgundian army back. After capturing the Navarran capital, we head west, engaging a combined enemy force in the woodlands of Orense. I should have waited for our troops to replenish, and although we eventually win, we take heavy losses in this battle. Castile's ready for white peace, which we accept in August of 1534. The war stalls here for a bit since nobody's able to get mill access through France. We're able to white peace Burgundy in March of 1536, which lets us set up the peace deal with Navarra, full annexation. In September, we finish coring the last Portuguese province, which lets us complete the mission in Kingdom of Portugal. This gives us some colonial buffs that we're not going to use at all this run. Speaking of colonists, I did want to show one thing that not everybody may be aware of. You can send colonists to your own provinces, and they have a % chance to randomly increase development. This works best in provinces with low total dev. For example, here's our free colonist from our national ideas that we're going to send to Ibiza. In July of 1540, we threaten war with Castile for the province of Salamanca, which they hand over. This lets us complete the mission Caliphate of Cordoba, giving us 200 admin power and permaclaims across northern Iberia. We're able to unlock new ideas very cheaply at this point due to a combination of our unique Tier 1 reform, our ideas, and our golden era. Here in May of 1541, we unlock another religious idea for just 260 admin. This could be even cheaper if we went with humanist ideas. We finish the religious ideas group in June of 1543. This gives us a couple nice boosts. First, we get the Holy War CB. Second, we get access to some strong policies. This religious quantity one gives 10% land morale, which is pretty good as far as policies go. I check army quality, and we have the highest morale in the world by a decent margin. In January of 1545, we discover enough overseas provinces to complete the next mission in the colonization line, continue exploration. This one gives us a free conquistador, but he has really good stats, 5561, and we'll use him here in the Old World. Our truce with Castile ends in the summer of 1545, and that means we're back for our fourth war. This isn't competitive, so I'll skip most of the easy occupations. Our golden era ends in January of 1547, just a few weeks before we capture Rome on a 35% tick. The papal fleet is forced to sea and gets immediately smashed by our navy. We separate peace the Pope in February, pillaging Rome for the second time and taking gold and war reparations. We make peace with Castile later that month, taking 7 provinces, including Barcelona. Here's something funny. I zoom out in May of 1548 and I see the European side of the Ottoman Empire fully occupied by Hungary. On its own, this isn't crazy, but look at the war. This is one that the Ottomans started. It's pretty rare to see an Ottoman game thrown this hard with no player intervention. In past Granada games, I've allied the Ottomans, but in my opinion, at least on the old patches, they're really only good as a defensive deterrent and as a bank. They'd always struggle with mill access, and it was a toss-up whether they'd march overland via Europe, overland via Africa, or just stay home. Transport across the Med, by far the most reasonable solution, was apparently off the table. We changed things up with the next conflict, declaring a holy war against France. I don't actually want to take any land here. This is mostly to get power projection and payback for enforcing peace on us earlier. Unsurprisingly, French troops are the best we've faced so far, with morale close to ours and another 10% discipline advantage. Fortunately for us, they don't have strong allies, so this is at least close to a 1v1. We capture the French fort in Avignon in November of 1551 and easily sink a small group of transports and light ships. We head back to defend our border fort on the western edge of the Pyrenees. The French have a disadvantage in both numbers and terrain, and we win without much trouble. Our forces move north and capture the corresponding French border fort in April of 1552, and our navy sinks another French fleet, including their flagship. The naval AI in this game isn't very good at keeping their ships together, and it's usually possible to take a divide and conquer approach. This is mostly true for land AI as well. We head east to relieve the siege of Avignon and engage a French force of 49,000 troops. The French retreat after taking almost 10,000 casualties, and we push on to engage the Swiss. Swiss morale is pretty dreadful, just 3.6, and they get stack wiped here. France tries to retake Avignon, and we defend again, taking another battle in September. They feed in reinforcements, but so do we, and we get another victory. Shortly after this battle, the Evangelical Union event fires. As a Sunni nation, we don't really have a dog in this fight, so unless Castile joins one of the leagues, we'll probably sit this one out. Paris is our next goal, but we have to take one of the forts in central France to clear a path, which we do in November of 1552. We move on to Paris, which we capture in February, although we lose the fort in Avignon at the same time. Our forces head southwest to keep the French from retaking their border fort, and we engage in June, earning another victory. It's back to Paris with another defense in November of 1553. We go back and forth for a couple more years, but I think you get the general idea. We make peace at the end of 1555, humiliating France, pillaging Paris, and taking max gold and war reps. Our truce with Castile ends in February of 1557, and our forces are already arrayed and ready for the fifth and final war. Castile's only allies are Brandenburg and what's left of Portugal, so I'll skip through this one. One highlight, the Portuguese capital is in Madeira, and we land troops to occupy it in April of 1558. We make peace in August of 1560, taking 8 provinces and ejecting Castile from Iberia. Just like Portugal, we'll let them keep their colonies and Atlantic islands. I take a look at the league setup in December of 1560. We have, or will soon have, claims in France and Hungary, but neither of those has joined either side. Sometimes a player joining one league is enough to get a rival to join the other, but that's not guaranteed, so I think we're going to pass on this league war. By October of 1561, we finish coring the last of the Castilian land, which lets us complete Iberian Dawn, giving us 10% land morale for 20 years, as well as some permaclaims in southern France. We go after Morocco next, declaring in January of 1563. Expanding into North Africa wasn't part of the goal for this run, but I didn't really like the border setup down here. The Mamluks are defenders of the Sunni faith, and they're a major power, so this is going to be another difficult war. Reviewing this in hindsight, fighting the Mamluks here was totally avoidable. We're also Sunni, so all we had to do was claim defender of the faith for ourselves, and the Mamluks would have been out of the picture. Oh well. The first battle of the war is in the Moroccan capital of Dra in January of 1564. Moroccan troops aren't particularly good, and they're badly outnumbered here. We head north to relieve the siege of Fez, fighting a combination of Moroccan, Tunisian, and Mamluk forces and scoring another victory. The third battle of the war is back in the south, and this time we're up against Mamluk forces only. Mamluk army quality is interesting, because their morale is pretty bad, but 120% discipline is not, especially in 1564. After taking the fort, we head back to the Moroccan capital to take on another combined enemy force. Just like the French War, I think you get the idea here. Enemy forces aren't bad, but they aren't coordinated and they struggle to put up effective resistance. In April of 1565, a little bit of normal development puts us over 1,000 total dev, which means we can upgrade to Empire Government rank. This means we've accomplished 2 of our goals for this run. All that's left is to convert the rest of Iberia to Sunni and make sure we're the #1 great power. I'm not going to show all the battles in this war, but I do want to show a tough loss. Our forces are badly under strength here, and we get engaged by a Mamluk stack in May of 1568. I should have pulled these armies back for reinforcement well before this point, and we get punished with a defeat. Fortunately, just a month later, the Mamluks are ready for white peace, which we offer. In February of 1569, we unlock our 4th idea group, and I choose quality. Later that month, Tunis offers us white peace, which we accept, leaving Morocco without allies. We sign peace at the end of the month, taking 9 provinces across northern Morocco. This lets us complete the mission Moroccan Conquest, giving us some temporary claims. We declare another war in North Africa, going after Tunis this time in September of 1574. We rush Morocco first, and we're able to sign white peace in June of 1575. Tunis isn't able to offer resistance, and we siege down the country and set up a peace deal 2 years later. We take 11 provinces across northern Algeria. We've met most of our objectives for this run, but we still have to wait for some provinces in northern Iberia to come out of religious resistance. As I suspected, that Protestant center of Reformation in Brittany did end up messing with our conversions a bit. While we wait, I'll try to complete one more mission, which requires taking the islands of Sardinia and Corsica. We declare in June of 1581, and Hungarian Diplos improved a bit. They're now allied to Burgundy. We push into Burgundy first, and their capital falls shockingly easily after a siege of just 26 days. Burgundy tries to retake their capital with a massive combined force of almost 200,000 troops, but we manage to hold the line and force their retreat. After this battle, Burgundy's ready for peace, and they're willing to pay us some gold, which we accept. Making peace with Burgundy loses mill access, and I'm expecting to get black flagged, but before that happens, the game gives us another battle, which is kind of strange. I guess if forces from both sides are about to be black flagged on the same province, the game forces a battle first. I'm sure somebody smarter than me will have an explanation in the comments. As we head back to our territory, we stack wipe a Neapolitan army trying to siege one of our border forts. I have no idea why this army has 10k cav and only 3k infantry. It's time to take the war goal, and we land troops to fully occupy Sardinia. We head into Naples next, occupying several forts, including the capital. If you're wondering why Hungary and Naples seem distracted here, they're also fighting the Ottomans and actually winning again. We end the war in May of 1584, pillaging Naples and taking the island of Sardinia. There's one island left to complete our mission, Corsica. I look at threatening war, but Genoa's Diplo is way too good for that to work, so we declare in June of 1585. They're allied to both France and Venice, who's still having a great game with control of a large part of Italy. The first battle of the war is in the highlands northwest of Avignon, where we catch a moderately sized combined enemy force. Between finishing quality ideas and an advisor, we're now at 10% discipline ourselves, and this is an easy stack wipe. We fight a huge naval battle in November in the Gulf of Valencia. This is a combined fleet with ships from France, Genoa, Venice, and even Siena. We sink or capture 25 ships, including 10 heavies and the Venetian flagship, but at the steep price of 10 of our own heavies. In December, we march to relieve the siege of Avignon, scoring another victory. Just 4 months later, we have to defend again, this time from a massive force of almost 200,000 enemy soldiers. I definitely could have microed this better, but our troop quality is good enough that it doesn't matter and we score another victory. Speaking of poor micro, I make the bad decision to split our forces to siege 2 French forts at the same time, and the enemy makes the right call, committing everything to defending 1 fort. I try to bring reinforcements over, but it's too late and we take a massive loss, almost 11 war score and over 65,000 casualties from just this battle. It's easy to get overconfident in the mid to late game, but the AI can still punish bad decisions sometimes. After several months of reinforcement and expansion, we head northeast to defend our fort in Granada. You'll notice that even though we've been pushed back to Iberia, we still have a significant amount of war score. That's because I chose the Holy War CB, and the ticking war score is based on battle results. This is another reason why the Holy War CB is so good. I'd much rather have to win battles than be forced to hold a particular province. In fact, we have enough war score to end the war now, in January 1588, just taking Corsica. Enemy forces lost a total of 82 ships in the war, including 16 heavies, which is pretty wild. Here's a war declaration you don't see too often. Venice declaring on Byzantium in 1588. Apparently Hungary forced their release at the end of that Ottoman War. This is one of those times I wish it wasn't a no allies run. We could swoop in here and save Byzantium. We finish coring Corsica in July of 1590, which lets us finally complete the mission that we've spilled so much blood for, Islands of the Mediterranean. It's a pretty good one, giving 8 development in southern Sardinia, a permanent bonus to trade power and goods produced in that province, and permaclaims in Sicily. We're still waiting for one more province in northern Iberia to come out of conversion resistance, so we'll go after Morocco one last time. We occupy Morocco without much trouble, then head east to meet the Mamluks at our Algerian border forts. We fight in Hadna in August of 1592, and even though Mamluk discipline is up to 125%, they're just too outnumbered. We separate peace Tunis in April of 1593, demanding they annul their alliance with Morocco. We march west and engage a large Mamluk force in August, scoring another victory. I'll skip the next few years of whack-a-mole. We separate peace the Mamluks in July of 1596, and we reach a peace deal with Morocco later that month, taking 8 provinces. We finish converting Iberia to Sunni, so we've completed all our goals, and this seems like a good place to end this run. This mission tree gives you a crazy amount of claims towards the bottom, all the way east to Persia, but that would be like a 2-hour video and probably put you to sleep. Let's do an overview of the world and our nation. We're the #1 great power, with England in second and a very strong PLC in third. England loses points for never being able to unify the British Isles. Scotland's still around, and Denmark even has a presence here in the north. Almost half England's scores from colonial nations. They had a dream set up this game since we were regularly battering their colonial rivals Castile and Portugal. The Mamluks are in 4th, which for an AI is pretty impressive. France is in 5th. They weren't really able to recover from the Burgundy situation, and fighting us several times also slowed their expansion. Hungary's in 6th, having completed the integration of Naples. I'm not sure that I've seen an AI Hungary ever get control of almost half of Italy before. Venice is in 7th with a very respectable game. I was honestly surprised in that first war with Venice how effective they were in bringing troops to Iberia and making things difficult for us. Burgundy's in 8th, and this is a good job by the AI, but these borders are tough to look at. Let's go through some honorable mentions here. Cologne had a solid game, and Switzerland has been eaten by Geneva and the 3 leagues. Ethiopia and Kilwa are having decent games, and we have a Shia Persia on the map, which I always like to see. China and India are kind of a mess. It doesn't look like any single nation has really broken away in either region. Here's the culture map mode. I didn't put an emphasis on culture conversions this game. We did a handful to complete estate agendas, but that's about it. What did get an emphasis were religious conversions. Per the run goal, we've converted every province in Iberia to Sunni. Here's a look at our ideas. I think these worked well for this run, particularly in terms of policies. If we were doing a more conquest-focused run, I think I would have prioritized admin and espionage ideas. Here's a look at the economy tab. This is the 2nd highest income in the world, behind only Venice. We're also 2nd in army quality, behind an impressive 7.0 morale from Burgundy. We're 3rd in army losses, behind the usual suspects. And here's the in-game stat screen. We went 41-0 in our wars, but the strangest thing here is further down. We annexed 97 provinces, but we only ever eliminated 2 nations, Navarra and Aragon. This was my first time playing Granada in quite a while, and my first time without allies or subjects. I suspected that the first Castilian War would be difficult, but after that the run would be pretty straightforward, and that ended up being mostly correct. Castile and Portugal are hard nations for the AI to play, especially once they start colonizing. Granada was a natural fit for this type of run because they don't really have a great slate of ally options. Morocco and Tunis are as likely to pull you into a defensive war as actually help you, and the Ottomans and Mamluks are really far away. I never used to play no allies runs, but I'm starting to really like them. I'll definitely make more diplomacy-based challenges, but there's a simplicity and level of control in these runs that's just not there when you're juggling allies and subjects and being called to silly wars all the time. Anyways, that about wraps this one up. If you enjoy this sort of content, feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.